All right, good evening. We're back from closed session. And if we could start with the Pledge of Allegiance. And since it's Dr. Lewis and Mrs. Mills' last school board meeting, if they could lead us in the pledge.
Ready, begin.
I pledge allegiance to the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Thank you both. And as I mentioned, we did come back from closed session. We did take action, unanimous by the board, on some new employees, some new leaders to the district, either new to the district or moving up in the district. And I'll turn over to Dr. Hanson to announce them and give them some recognition.
Thank you, Mr. Lee. And as mentioned, the board took action in closed session regarding the hiring of the following employees. And as your name is read, if you'd please stand and remain standing. And we'd like to give a brief introduction about who you are and your biography. As a matter of fact, we know that there are several family members that might be here too, and so we'll, at the very end, would like you to have your family members stand up as well. But the first one is Dr. Ramoni Yee, principal at Sierra Middle School. Dr. Yee began teaching in the Long Beach Unified School District in 2001, teaching 10th grade English and ELD 1 through 3. She moved to Rialto Unified in 2003, where she continued to teach English at the high school level, and at that point started to become involved in leadership opportunities. The district promoted Dr. Yee to assistant principal at the high school level in 2006. From 2006 to 2013, Dr. Yee worked at Rialto High School, Eisenhower High School, and finally moved to Kolb Middle School. In 2013, she was recruited to Victor Valley Union High School District, where she served as the director of school reform and categorical special projects. During that time, the assistant superintendent of Ed Services was promoted to superintendent, and Dr. Yee became the assistant superintendent of Ed Services. Her desire is to come back to the school site and come back to Riverside Unified. And Dr. Yee, as mentioned, will serve as the principal at Sierra Middle School. Welcome to Riverside. The next candidate is Chanel Simeon. Chanel. Chanel began teaching in 1997 in the Los Angeles Unified School District. She taught in the 2nd and 3rd grade in Los Angeles, and in 2004, she was hired in the Oxnard School District as a school psychologist. In 2013, she accepted the position of assistant principal at 2 schools in Oxnard, assisting in all the duties of an elementary assistant principal. And Chanel Simeon will be serving as a program specialist for us in special education. Welcome to Riverside, Chanel. Don Brawley, assistant principal at Alcott Elementary School. Mrs. Brawley started teaching in Riverside Unified in 2003 at Kennedy Elementary School, where she continues to teach today. During this time, she served in many leadership roles. She's a team leader, serves on the school site council, and involved in a whole variety of other functions that occur at the elementary school. And she received her degree from Cal State Northridge, her bachelor's degree, as well as her master's degree from also California State University at Northridge. And so we get to keep Dawn, and she will be now transitioning from as the assistant principal at Alcott Elementary School. Congratulations, Dawn. Jennifer Jackson, assistant principal at Monroe and Madison Elementary Schools. You can clap. Jennifer began teaching in 2001 here in Riverside at the elementary school, and she has spent her entire career at Mountain View Elementary School, where she's taught multiple grades, going to take on many leadership roles, such as team leader, mentor teacher, and a member of the SST team. And this will be Jennifer's first administrative position, and she will be, again, sharing the assignment between Monroe and Madison Elementary School. Congratulations, Jennifer. We have two who could not be with us this evening, assistant principals. One is Denise Gothas, assistant principal at Taft and Beatty Elementary School. She'll be splitting her time between those two schools really quickly. Denise began teaching here in RUSD in 2001 at Kennedy Elementary School. She has been at Kennedy the whole entire time. This last year, as the principal at Kennedy went on maternity leave, the assistant principal became principal, and Denise became the assistant principal for several of those months. And so she brings a wealth of teaching and elementary experience in the classroom and as administrator. As I mentioned, we welcome Denise, and she'll be split between Taft and Beatty Elementary School. Also, who cannot be with us tonight because she is in Africa. I should have said that Denise right now is at a Broadway in New York. Shayna Gulbuff is in Africa, and she will be the assistant principal at Jackson Elementary School. Go ahead. Thank you. Shayna started teaching in RUSD in 2004, where she taught grades 5 and 6 at Longfellow Elementary, Alcott Elementary, Washington Elementary, and she even spent some time teaching in 7th and 8th grade at Shamawa Middle School. In 2008, she took the assignment as the Hearts Coordinator, Teacher on Special Assignment. That's an after-school program for those of you who don't know. And she's at Bryant Elementary School. And she has a couple hundred kids that she really provides the leadership for, takes care of them, teaches them, has a staff from 3 to 6 every afternoon at Bryant Elementary School. And Shayna will be the assistant principal at Jackson Elementary School. And last, but certainly not least, the classified personnel manager in human resources is Mr. Marcus Ridley. Marcus started his human resource career in 2003, working for Coca-Cola as a human resource intern in Atlanta, Georgia. And in 2006, he moved to Riverside and began working at the Riverside County Department of Social Services as a staff analyst, monitoring different grants and programs and things such as that. From 2007 to 2011, he became the contract grants analyst for Riverside County. In 2011, Marcus was hired here in RUSD as our contract analyst, and he did a whole variety of contracts and was very, very good at it. And in 2014, he was promoted then to manager of grants, project development, preparing and submitting grant and applications, and Marcus, since that time, has brought in millions of dollars to RUSD. And he has accepted the new position now to follow Robin Mesa in Human Resources, the classified side of the house, as the classified personnel manager. Congratulations, Marcus. Thank you. Now you guys can be seated, but I'm going to have you stand back up for a minute. Dr. Lee, or Dr. Yee, do you have family here that you'd like to introduce? Okay. Just didn't want to leave you out. I didn't think so. Didn't want to leave you out. We also have Chanel Simeon. Chanel, do you have family here? Would you like to have them stand up and let us meet them? Sure. Wonderful. Thank you. Oh, okay. Wonderful. Wonderful. Thank you for supporting Chanel and for sharing your wife with us here as she comes to RUSD. We couldn't be more delighted to have her come and join the team. It's nice to meet the family. We also, let me see, Don, do you have family here, Don? Would you like to have them stand and introduce? Oh, there they are. All right. Wonderful. And Don's husband could not be with us. He is at school. working on his doctorate degree at USC, and I know Don's husband because he serves as the superintendent in Compton Unified School District. And so it's nice to see the education runs in the family. Congratulations and welcome. Jennifer Jackson, do you have family here that you can introduce to us? Okay. Wow, DLI. Wonderful. Well, again, congratulations to you, and thank you for sharing your mommy and your wife with us as she takes on new assignments here in Riverside. And I hope I didn't leave anyone out. Okay, well done again, Human Resources, and congratulations to all the new members or sitting in new seats of Riverside Unified. That's it.
Thank you, Dr. Hanson. We're excited to have all of our new employees in their new position. So tonight we're all here for a study session on STEM, and I think the Chief Academic Officer, Lynn Carmody. Yeah, and all the new employees and families, feel free to leave. Thank you. Or if you want to stay, you're welcome. Thank you, Lynn.
Good evening, Vice President Lee, Dr. Hanson, and esteemed board members. Tonight we have the opportunity to review some work that we've done across the district with STEM. So a couple of things that we're going to do is respond to some questions that have come up. I know Board President Hunt assigned a committee that was headed by Patricia Locke-Dawson and Kathy Alavey to look into STEM and work with the STEM Center and other ideas for STEM across our district. And so a couple of questions have come up as far as STEM strategy as a whole for district. We presented back in November, and so I've just asked staff to provide an update to you about that, very brief. And then also with respect to the next generation science standards, which are the standards that we're implementing across the state, I will ask staff to also provide a brief update on that implementation timeline. So we're going to start out with that, and then we're going to jump into the UCR STEM Center design work that we've done since last January. And we'll spend a lot of time discussing that, a little bit of time presenting on the work that was done by the design team, recommendations and next steps, and then hopefully a lot of time just listening to the board. The goal for this is to stay with the board alongside getting the ideas well in advance so that we can implement the ideas as we go instead of having to backtrack. And so you'll be hearing about the updates on a regular basis. Okay, so we're going to start out with having Brad Scheer come up and respond to the question about district-wide STEM update and the next generation science standards.
Good evening, Vice President Lee, Dr. Hanson, and board members. So you probably heard Mrs. Carmody say twice the word brief, so I'm going to really try to accommodate that. So I'm here to give you an update on our district-wide STEM strategy. And again, as you'll recall, back in November of 2015, we provided you with an overview of that district-wide STEM strategy. You have a variety of documents in your binder, so I'm not going to go through those in depth, but just know that from pages 19 to 31, there's a variety of infographics. The STEM 5-year plan is there, and some other resources. So please peruse those at your leisure when you have an opportunity. And if you have questions tonight, please ask. So what we have here is just a quick update. As you'll recall from our study session back in November, our district-wide STEM strategy has 4 components to it. There is an organizational structure that ensures that we get feedback regularly from our community on our district-wide STEM plan. There's a communications plan that's part of the STEM strategy. There's obviously the student learning component, which is the most important, what we want for our students. And then finally, the professional learning component, which is the training that we need to provide for our teachers and the support we need to provide. This slide just simply shows you some of the actions to date since November that we've taken in each of these categories. So number one, under the organizational structure, we have not reconvened that STEM Advisory Committee yet again. We plan to do that in the fall, but we've held a series of working group meetings, internal groups working on our plan and our processes. In terms of communication, of course, we had this board study session. Mr. Robertson has met with our DLAC since the November meeting, as well as a series of site-level ELACs as well to provide an overview of the STEM strategy. And of course, the work of the STEM Center design team certainly communicated the importance of STEM education in the district and involved the community. In the area of student learning, we've been doing a variety of things, really excited about some of the things we've been doing. So in the area of increasing a STEM-centered instruction and interventions, I just want to give you a few examples of some things that are happening in the district. So as we've mentioned before, our Science Renaissance project, which is our elementary professional development project for 66 teachers in the district, was launched last summer and has continued through this year. And for all of those teachers that have participated, we can truly say there's been an increase in science instruction in those classrooms. And what's been interesting is that those teachers have really served almost as ambassadors to other teachers, and as they've been so enthusiastic about the science instruction they're providing their students, many of their colleagues are also asking to either participate or to, can I also get a FOSS kit, the Full Option Science Center kit? Can I get one in my classroom? We have principals that have expressed an interest in getting more kits for their teachers. We're looking to increase the number of teachers that will participate this summer in our project, and so we're getting some momentum. It's not every teacher, not every elementary teacher, but a nice cohort of folks who will serve as leaders as we launch continual learning for our teachers in the future. In the area of interventions, we launched an after-school intervention program that was designed for our long-term English learners. We called it LAB, our Literacy Acquisition Brainiacs. I think Dr. Farouk, you came and observed that. Again, designed to build language for our long-term English learners, but it was housed in a thematic science approach. So we brought in a program called Club Invention, and so students regularly engage in science and engineering practices. There's a tutoring component, and then there's an hour of intervention, but it's science-based. And it was really very well received this last winter and spring, and so we're planning on continuing that next year, and it was in our LCAP for this next year. Also, in terms of intervention, we're now 2 weeks into our elementary summer program, which is going really well. And of course, our focus is reducing the summer slide and literacy, but there's also a science theme to it. And so kids are regularly engaging in science experiences. The theme is summer camp, and so there's regular science experience as well. So even in interventions that were designed for a different purpose, there's a science theme or component that's couched around it. We've launched new Project Lead the Way programs or clubs at several of our schools, including Monroe, Longfellow, Earhart, and RSA. The first robotics clubs have begun at several sites, including Fremont, Pauley, and RSA. And of course, you're well aware of all of the work with computer science that's been happening across the district with Code.org and the CS First software. And of course, our Science and Engineering Fair and our Science Olympiad competitions. In the area of awareness and leadership, we, of course, have our Inspire Her Mind conference, as well as our STEP conference. And 200 girls in our Inspire Her Mind conference, 1,500 students from RUSD attended the STEP conference. We have a series of summer workshops. This is kind of exciting for our high school students this summer. And so one of them is called the LEAPS Academy, which stands for Law Enforcement and Public Safety Academy, which is a partnership with the STEP Board, WARNS, and the Police Department, and provides STEM-oriented workshops on public safety and first response for our Law and Protective Services Academy at North. And then in a second week for our biomed students at Arlington and Ramona, we're anticipating 120 students in those academies. And finally, we have a Cyber Patriot workshop, which is also for students who are interested in network security, who are fascinated into coding, so network security awareness and development for students interested in computer coding and cybersecurity. We have 60 students that we plan to have participating in that this summer. And then last but not least, college summer courses. The UCR Academy, we're able to provide scholarships for high-achieving, unduplicated students to attend and accumulate college credit in STEM-related coursework. So there's quite a few things happening in the student learning side, both in the classroom and outside of the classroom. In terms of professional learning, I mentioned the Science Renaissance Project. For an NGSS training, we started that this year, really focused on the science and engineering practices with our secondary teachers. In terms, yeah, sorry,
What's
Dr.
the acronym NGSS?
NGSS stands for Next Generation Science Standards. So our new science standards, and I'll be talking a little bit more about that in a couple of slides coming up. Oops, there it is, before I keep going. So in terms of next steps, I mentioned earlier in terms of the organizational structure piece, we want to reconvene that STEM advisory panel to, again, give feedback to our STEM plan. It really is a living document, a working draft that we want to continue to revise and update as we need to. We'll continue to report to the board as well as to the subcommittee of the board, and then we just continue to work on updating that plan. In terms of communication, Mr. Robertson and others are planning a district parent night, district STEM night for parents to help them see the STEM opportunities for their child in the district and or at their child's school. So we're really excited about that. That'll be a new thing next year, as well as in addition to student STEM nights, which will be held at our middle schools, attended by middle school and feeder elementary schools, promoting and showcasing STEM learning for students there. And of course, we want to continue our regional partnerships in terms of STEM leadership, regularly attending meetings at regional and state level. In area of student learning, a couple of things. One, we need to continue to look forward to determining our plans for the adoption and/or securing of instructional material that's aligned to those new next generation science standards. So that's going to be work that will be beginning next year and into the subsequent years. And then it also, and it's just one little bullet point there, but it's really important, determining STEM learning options and programs. And so we really need to continue our work on identifying and promoting explicit STEM pathways for our students, both within our existing schools, where we identify particular learning targets and experiences we want kids to have, and or an additional STEM school or schools, right? So we have a lot of work to do in that. We know that, and that's going to be the work of the STEM working group and the advisory committee going forward. And of course, we mentioned in professional learning, we want to continue that Science Renaissance Project. We're in year 2 of that. Continue NGSS rollout training for our secondary teachers. We'll be focusing on the cross-cutting concepts this next year. And I'll kind of explain that in the next slide. And personalized learning experiences for our teachers as well. So Dr. Farouk, you asked about the next generation science standards. Here's just a brief infographic. And there's a better, if you want to turn to page 30, you can kind of see a better document that shows some more detail there. But the next generation science standards, which are our new science standards, and they are adopted and approved by the state board. They are officially our standards, but we're not yet assessing on those standards yet. And so we're transitioning into moving towards instructing into those standards. But they're very different from the previous set of standards. Whereas the previous set of science standards were very content-based and focused on passively receiving content about science, the new standards really focus on encouraging students to do science and to engage in science. As you can see, there's 3 dimensions to it. There's disciplinary core ideas, that's the what, the content, but also those science and engineering practices, the how, the skills that the students need to engage in to do science. In the same way, and very similar to our math standards, by the way, which have content standards and math practice standards. And then a 3rd dimension, which is those cross-cutting concepts, which are helping students to see the connections between the different disciplines in the science, patterns, scale, a variety of things. You can see those in the document that you have there. And so all around, if you see on the screen here, all around, students regularly engaging with authentic phenomena and problems. So it's not just about passively listening, but actually doing science. And finally, in terms of a timeline for next generation science standard rollout, this is a busy slide here, but just to kind of let you know that we have a plan to move forward with providing teachers with the resources that they need, curriculum, materials, as well as the training that they need. And so there's a variety of steps that are listed there. Page 31 has an infographic which actually shows a 5-year timeline in terms of implementing this NGSS rollout. I just want to draw your attention to a couple of key points here. If you look at 2016-17, that 5th bullet point says CASP science assessment. So beginning next year, we will actually, our 5th graders or 8th graders and a sample of our high school students will actually take a next generation science standards science assessment. It'll be a pilot, a test of the test, so we won't get any feedback or data on it, but it'll be the first time students take a different type of assessment when it comes to science. The following year, again, that last bullet point, you can see there'll be a field test, which will be a further refinement of that assessment. And then finally, in 2018-19, the CASP science assessment, we anticipate that'll be the test that counts, right? And so I know that we're hearing about the lead metrics for our LCAP, and the last document I read indicated that right now they're going to incorporate the language arts and math assessments in those lead metrics, but they anticipate including the science assessment data as well. And so the state just communicating the value and importance of science. And so we know it'll be important. We know we have to continue to provide the resources for our teachers and in transition to the pedagogical practices they're going to need. So we definitely have a plan for them. I'm trying to be quick and brief because I know you have other topics, but does the board have any questions for me?
Yes, I do. So I know that you and Mr. Robertson spent some time working out this STEM strategy for the entire district, and I'd like to ask two questions about it. First, do you think it's aggressive enough in terms of getting our students where we need to be in terms of STEM studies? And secondly, do you think we've authorized enough funds to adequately put it together this next year?
Okay. And Mr. Robertson, you're welcome to join me at the podium if you'd like to, if you have some other thoughts. I think it is a comprehensive strategy. In terms of aggressiveness, I would be interested, of course, in your feedback on what are some of those ideas. I think there's a balance, of course. So I'll speak from elementary, and I know that there's obviously a difference between elementary and secondary, where elementary teachers have to teach all of the content. And we, of course, have been walking them through new language arts and new math standards and new materials. And so there's a limit, of course, to how much teachers can take in at one time and roll out effectively. So going too fast on the elementary side could be possibly detrimental. We want to make sure we have enough time for them to solidify their understanding of the language arts and math standards so that then they're ready to take on the science standards. And so we've identified some pioneers, right, these folks in the Science Renaissance Project who are moving forward with this and then helping their colleagues, and they're going to serve as leaders as we move forward. I don't know, John, do you want to speak to the secondary side at all or on that question?
Well, first of all, I'd like to take you back to how the STEM strategy came about. We did involve the community, the business community, higher level education, and that STEM strategy was a manifestation of the work that that group did. So it was our analysis as a group that came up with the strategy that we have right now. Also remember that the strategy is a dynamic document. We're going to return to it, assess where we're at, and figure out whether it's aggressive enough, too aggressive, and respond to what RUSD's needs really are. So it's a growing process. So I wouldn't say aggressive or not or whatever. It's what a group of people came up with that, and we're going to return back to it. So at the secondary level, we understand that the NGSS it's going to be an incremental process to get to where we need to be, particularly at the secondary level. We have a middle school decision to make about learning progressions, and we have a high school progression issue as well, where we need to align what the NGSS is looking for with what we've got right now and what's being provided to the students to have them get to the UCR or the UCs and the colleges and things like that. So does that help you?
It does. It does. Yeah, go ahead.
So the second part was about the funding. So we have funded, we've provided a variety of new funding in the LCAP for many of these after school or additional opportunities, so that's been helpful. We will have to, and we've also been outlining a multi-year plan in terms of curriculum adoptions, curriculum materials, that anticipates the need for science materials. And so we have some funding right now. We will probably need some more to carry that out. So that'll be ongoing conversations about how much funding we need to do some of those things, the training, the materials, those resources, those kinds of things. So it will definitely be a continuing conversation about need because we have to fund it adequately, I agree.
Good. Thank you.
Thank you, Mr. Lee.
Thank you. All right, at this time, I'd like to have our consultant who worked with our STEM Design Committee come up, Victoria Bergsogel. I got it right the second time. And I wanted to also make note that we do have several of our committee members in the audience tonight. And so I wanted to just recognize, because they're leading community members, and we had a diverse group of people that we felt really represented our community as a whole. And so if they can just raise their hands. From the city, the mayor's office, UCR, several people representing UCR, Riverside STEM Academy, parents, our own staff members. So that broad-based representation was really crucial for us, and it will be crucial as we go on with the smaller working committee. Are you ready? At this point, we would like to jump in with the development of particular themes through the design process, and then our recommendations and next steps. If you can be thinking about some of the guiding questions that I would like to pose, the idea about what additional input might we give regarding this. Is there anything else that we should be researching, any different ideas? What other community partners might we need to work with? And then finally, something that Victoria won't lead, but will be a point of discussion, is our timeline, and then are there other STEM ideas as far as taking STEM to other locations in our district. Okay, so that's where we're at right now. Thank you for being here.
Well, Dr. Hansen and esteemed board members, I'm so grateful to be here and so grateful to be involved in this project. It's been thrilling, and I have the great opportunity to work across the country and sometimes even the world, and you often get the question, what's exciting? What's out there that you're working on that's really exciting? And this opportunity always comes up, and people get really jazzed. There are so many possibilities. I also want to echo what Dr. Carmen Day said about the committee. They were generous, so generous with their time and commitment. They were thoughtful, great leaders, asked very penetrating questions. So it's just a great, and we were led and directed by a couple of great board members. So kudos to the whole team. I'm just standing here reflecting their hard work. So in terms of our charge, I might say that we came up with an idea fairly quickly. I think when an idea's time has come, then the community can rally around it, and now we need to just put some legs to it. We began to meet January 27th and we had this great opportunity before us. What if we had some land and a potential partnership with not only UCR but other institutions, industry partners, businesses, etc. in the community? What would we do? And we landed, and we knew we had an existing robust small school, Riverside STEM Academy. We knew that we were interested in perhaps exploring other opportunities for students district-wide to participate in a variety of labs, and we really wanted to start that STEM pipeline early with young children. So we talked about things like a Challenger Center, et cetera, to engage them early in the work, because we all know that we're born naturally curious, right? We are all scientists broadly writ, and so we wanted to be sure to capture that excitement going forward. So that was our charge, to bring a conceptual idea before you, which we're doing tonight. We probably all know some of the questions about why. Why would we do this at this time? You know, there's an opportunity to capitalize upon. We have a great need for this STEM center, not only in this community but in the world. We have an opportunity to really capture students' imaginations and curiosity. So, and it's also an opportunity for the district, as was already described, to strengthen the STEM program throughout, to be a beacon of light. So we're excited about that. I might say that when we think about STEM not only desires collaboration, but it really requires it. If we're going to have robust STEM activities, science, technology, engineering, math, and the world is a unique place that requires us to really integrate material and to solve problems and to work together. And I think that this, the committee that came together to conceptualize this idea and all the work that went before the committee's work, is absolutely exciting. I would say pretty close to the first meeting, we arrived at the 5 themes that you see before you. We asked about the current STEM footprint, what people were excited about, what they're already doing in Riverside, and we very quickly, and then we went into small groups and ate and came back, and you know, there was great synergy. It was eerily similar how the various groups came back and made a pitch for what they thought this STEM center could be. So we said that we wanted it to be high level, creme de la creme, world class. Our kids are going to leave here so proud of what they know and are able to do, and it's, again, going to be a beacon. We said it's not worth doing unless there's equity and access for all. And we know in society some students don't always get the goods, and so what were we going to do to make sure that all students had some kind of access, some kind of touch point, and were prepared? So that equity and access piece was very, very important to the committee. We talked about integrated interdisciplinary programs, to my point before about how important collaboration is in real-world learning. Something that dropped off the slide in terms of, we had a little poster made of our recommendation. We talked about capstone projects, having students really address the grand challenges of our time. Figure out what they're passionate about, but what are the challenges that our society needs to deal with? And so having it be integrated and interdisciplinary rather than siloed, as learning often is. The community connections and partnerships, key. And again, if you have an idea whose time has come, then the entire community will rally around it. I hail from Seattle, and so we talked about a number of exemplars as the committee did their work, but I was involved in the conceptualization of Raisbeck Aviation High School. And the minute that became public knowledge, and the minute we began to prove that we could do something great, it was hothoused for almost 10 years before it actually moved into its building, co-located with the Museum of Flight on Boeing Field. But you know, after the first newspaper article, people came out of the woodwork, ring, ring. I'm an engineer. Do you need some mentors? My company would love to have some internships. Would love to offer internships. So by the time the school district built the building, they only paid for a small portion of the actual cost of construction. But partners don't always just come with dollars. They come with expertise. They come and everyone from the architect's partner ran the flight simulator for Boeing, so hey, I'm going to open that opportunity up to aviation students, etc. So people came out of the woodwork, and I think you have the same opportunity here with partnerships, and they're widespread, and the opportunities are everywhere. And then finally, that last point, socially responsible citizens, again, on a PowerPoint slide, you know how they drop off some words so that it fits nicely on the slide? But we said that we wanted to be sure that we designed a program that developed socially responsible citizenships with a joy for learning. And I didn't want that to get missed, because we wanted, I think to a person, the committee thought that learning needs to be joyful. And so those are the 5 themes. I'll just do one more slide, give you a little more background, and then we'll open it up, because really we want to hear from you. So in terms of recommendations, you can see a list before you that we wanted this to be rigorous, wanted it to be diverse, wanted make sure that there was collaboration. make sure that it's real world and authentic, that therefore project-based learning and integrated learning, et cetera, very important. Small enough and personalized enough that students don't get lost in the crowd. I work with students all over again, the country again, and too often I hear, I'm invisible, I'm not known well. And so to provide an opportunity where it is very personalized and that students, and another term that came up, I was reviewing the notes in preparation to address you, and something that came up over and over again is giving students an opportunity to find out and pursue their passions. What am I passionate about? What am I good at? And to do some of that exploration. So we envision that potentially students will be earning college credit, that there will be strong partnerships, not only with UCR again. Think about it, the Dean of Education is here, and to think about the residency program of what could be possible in terms of an incubator for STEM education and STEM learning. There are so many, many possibilities. And I would also call your attention to the whole idea of these labs. I don't know that, I think future work is required in terms of not only what is the need in the community, what's the interest, where are the strengths and assets. So whether it's a nanotechnology program, environmental science, astrophysics, we involved students. And I can't underscore this enough. We had students involved in the committee work, and we spent some time interviewing them. And you should have seen the eyes light up when we talked about biomedicine or biotech. What if you had an opportunity to go to a class at UCR and, or a school and, you know, work on a prosthetic hand or something? Woo! So, you know, I think there's a variety of possibilities, again, to address the world's challenges and have students feel like they're making important contributions. And in fact, when we did that, that design thinking exercise, I will forever be struck by the web of relationships that were conceptualized. Students were in each group, and each table group developed their conceptual idea of what this could be, and there were all of these concentric circles and satellite dishes for listening, and it was just really great. So I would say that the whole process was characterized by imagination, creativity, and curiosity as the group came together, and I probably could never do justice to their work in a simple report. It's almost like you had to be there. But I say keep your eyes open as you will as we move forward, because it's going to be pretty exciting ahead. And just a final comment before we open it up for your commentary is that, you know, we really, in this day and age, we want all students, again, to the equity and access piece, we want to help them conceptualize how they think about the world and what their contributions can be to it. And we want to make sure that, especially in STEM, where women are sorely underrepresented and also people of color are underrepresented, we want to make sure that we figure out a way to excite all students and the community and really let this idea take fire and move forward. So now we will, I think the most important part of this study session is to hear the board's ideas. I have my experience with board members have been that that you're whip smart and very thoughtful, and so and some of you I'm meeting for the first time, but Dr. Carmen Day has. I said, so tell me, how can I be prepared? She said, oh, they're going to be brilliant. So here, opening the stage to you, and we'll do our best to capture your thoughts and answer your questions.
I'm glad I became a doctor in one board meeting, by the way. That was awesome. I wanted to also make mention of some of the struggles that we had as well, just because I think it helps with where we're going as far as grappling with some of the things to move forward. We know that there is a great foundation set at Riverside STEM Academy, and so we knew that we wanted to take that high school program and figure out how do we involve students from across the district. So I wanted to recognize that. There was a point of concern about transportation for students, and the representative from the city, Lale, was talking about public transportation options and that can be opened up. We also, as we've discussed in board meetings the idea of preparing students across the board to have the ability to take and be prepared for the high level that expectation that we have there. As far as specifics about the content of the work that's being done, the challenges that are being faced, the projects that are being initiated, that would definitely depend on our partners and the economic climate for what kinds of sciences we need in the future for our community too. So that's it. We're ready to talk about other ideas at the pleasure of the board.
Thank you both. Mrs. Allaby.
Thank you. I'll just start the ball rolling here because Patricia and I want to kind of throw in our 2 cents since we were involved from the beginning. And since I was involved from the beginning of when we actually started the STEM school way back, since the time that we've started it, it's been such a great success. It was more of a success than we could have anticipated, the STEM school, in terms of having kids participate and parents want it and the community support it. And that has led us to realize that we had a great thing there, but maybe we didn't have enough of an underpinning. So what you've seen tonight is a whole concept of programming that will start from elementary up and support what we can do at this new UCR STEM Center. Clearly we knew we needed more at the base too to get across the whole district, and that's why I asked about the STEM strategy for the district. I want to make sure that it's robust and that it actually positions us to be the great STEM district. And if it doesn't, it's not aggressive enough, right? Because what we're trying to do is trying to be world class, as you said, Victoria. And so we have to set this up to be world class, because I think we have a chance here to have a great symbiotic relationship with our higher education and to work celebrating it from the elementary school up and really, really create something special that will really set Riverside apart. And I think we worked very hard, don't you think, in our STEM meeting. We constantly came back to the idea of this excellence, that we wanted to set this as a trend for the whole district. It's very important that we do that. And so there have been a lot of further discussions. We'll talk to you about that as we go. But I just want to say thank you to all the committee members who really added something. But this is just the tip of the iceberg tonight compared to what we have to do to get this whole thing rolling. I mean, it all sounds really good, apple pie right now. It's going to mean a lot of hard work getting this up off the ground. But if we keep in mind that it has to have that excellent component and it's going to set Riverside apart, I think we're headed down the right road. So I think I'll let you add to that.
Thank you both, and thank you to our committee members. It was fabulous. You guys were just really a lot of fun to work with too. We had a good time. I think one of the biggest things that struck me with this effort was the involvement of our various partners in our community, and I think it made it very robust by having people outside of RUSD. And this is not to slam our folks in RUSD, but like anything, when you have a hybrid, often it is more rigorous or vigorous than when you have your pure strain. So I think it was very valuable. I do want to ask Mr. Lee and Dr. Farouk if you kind of understood how things went, how we had 4 meetings, and we did talk about what the physical structure would look like, and then also the programming piece. Are you, because we didn't go over that today, but are you aware of all that, or do you want to hear them or hear us talk about that a little bit?
Sure. Yeah, I'm not aware of the details. I mean, I heard about the meetings, but in terms of the details that went on, whatever you feel you should hear.
Because we had a number. I'm sorry. Go ahead.
I was just going to say, I mean, my preference is I'd rather have more information, even if it was in the due diligence, for our preparation, than not. So absolutely, whatever information we can have would be helpful.
Well, and I think I'll let Lynn and Victoria expand on this, and perhaps any of the committee members that want to as well. But our final meeting, I think our final group meeting, we broke into teams and actually drew pictures conceptually of what we thought the center would look like, who it would serve, and the types of programming it would have, down to the point of where we discussed the types of labs and how many children, how many students would be there, and what types of partnerships we would have. So we do have the information, and it's not reflected in here really, but we didn't really want to put artificial boundaries on something with that, but there were discussions about that. So maybe I'll let you.
I think
discuss it.
Victoria made reference to the idea of some of the labs that might be generated, for example, biomedicine, aviation, some NASA work that's already occurring that might carry into it, talked about computer science, and then also having some very set standards in each of those areas, for example, with communication, so that's across the board, research across the board, computation, the math, some of those things that would be what I would consider cross-cutting or standards for any of the specific content. However, we did not determine the specific content, nor did we generate set details. We just brainstormed together. So that's part of why we did not provide all the brainstorming, because our next steps will be quite a bit more in-depth and meaty, because now we would really have to dig in and say what are the main areas that we want to cover, specifically what is the structure that we would have with respect to the program that we're seeking at that high level, and how to include access to all. So this really was developing a standard conceptual knowledge about what we want to ensure for the STEM Center, and then from there really digging into the work. So that is actually the next step, and that's why we wanted to come tonight to hear any thoughts, because as we're venturing into the next level, we don't want to get ahead of the board. We want to be alongside, hearing any input that or thoughts that have come up.
Right, thank you. Mrs. Alavi?
Yeah, I was kind of gonna reiterate that, and you kind of talked a little bit about it. Other than the fact that our agreement with UCR dictates that we're going to have some shared lab space, we don't know what's going to be taught in that lab space or have a concept yet. We just have ideas. But I think what we did pretty much determine is that we are going to have a very excellent high school for kids that will be there from 9th or 8th through 12th grade. And we will also have a component of shared lab space and classroom space that will be available to other kids in the district who are science kids who need to access it, or who want to access advanced courses, or we almost call them extension courses, and they will have access to those, and that we would provide transportation from home schools to the STEM center so that they could access those kinds of classes. And we got this idea a lot from the students themselves, because we had a great panel of Arlington High School kids who came, who were excellent science kids, who all admitted to a student they didn't want to leave Arlington, that they wanted the access to some of the courses and information, but they wanted their experience in their home school. So that's how it grew. It grew because we know that there are some kids that are going to want to be there and be there solid, and there are going to be some kids who just want to access it for their own enrichment and joy of learning, as you said.
So in that conceptual thinking, how many students do we anticipate, or was it suggested that should be at that school, either permanently, or how many kids can come from other schools?
We did suggest numbers. Do you want to talk about that?
So we said that the small high school would be 400 to 500 students. We use terminology like residents and fellows, et cetera, that some would be in residence virtually full time, and that would be the small high school component. And then these shared labs which have yet to be identified, but there would be several shared labs that could be available for students for a variety of activities that would be available to, and then we would just need to begin to program available to students from across the district. The committee liked the idea of some kind of place for a symposium, like a large gathering place. Almost the university expressed, many of the professors in the room expressed the need for a place to give presentations and or have conversations, etc. So there was that component as well. We even talked about, for instance, again referencing aviation, but there's many other exemplars I could give you, sometimes providing areas for mentors. So places for students to actually meet with their mentor on the significant, robust program that they would have. So small high school, shared lab space, community spaces, and I could bore you or not, or excite you with details about indoor-outdoor connections, using the building as a teacher, however it's designed, make sure that they get that students have a sense of, oh, I understand mechanical systems now because I can see them labeled. So there was, to the two board members' point, there's a lot of detail that we can provide you if you'd like more.
Can I chime in too a little bit? So the other thing that we were given that I thought was very interesting were multiple models across the country where we could look at what other places were doing. And there's a picture of one in here in High Tech High down in San Diego. And so there are various ways of designing these programs and designing the space to support such a program. And the idea was that, you know, this wasn't going to be just for these 400 kids, but it was supposed to be for the whole district in some capacity or some way, or those that want to be there in some way. Beyond enrichment or some after school, I mean, I know Kathy used the term enrichment, but I think she
or
meant
extension. Maybe.
Yeah, extension. We were talking about designing it in such a way that the residents and fellows concept, where there were kids that were there full time, there were kids that could attend classes there that added value to their experience at their home high schools. So all those details need to be worked out. But we have some kind of very amorphous shapes of what those things could be.
I'm going to click back to this quote just because I think it's really meaningful for this group. And when you hear the word lab, some of us may think of what we are used to as a lab that we went into in university or even in high school. But the idea here is that it's, and I'll go back to computers or biomedical engineering. There might be something, a lab there might involve in English standards. The state standards are in there for English. There, definitely the center of it is the actual biomedical engineering. But then you also have maybe even a historical component where you're getting your history standards, but for sure the math and the English. And so when we say a lab, it's not really going and just sharing a lab. We're talking about an interdisciplinary course where you're hopefully resolving challenge-based learning, a challenge that we may have in our community, or even a world challenge through the learning that takes place in the course. And then there's some culminating project. They have mentors. There's hopefully internships, at least in the last 2 years, for all students. And those kinds of ideas, of course, it's still brainstorming, but those are ideas that were generated and still would be in the next phase of development as far as what does that really look like, what's the structure, what kinds of resources do we need to gather in order to make those things happen.
And I'll follow up with Patricia's information about High Tech High, where we saw videos of kids without the traditional structures that you would imagine, working outside of the classroom on projects, collaborating. It was pretty exciting. And that's the kind of environment I think that everybody in the committee saw. It was a step up, a new idea for a school, maybe not as traditional as we have had in the past, something that could be really out of the box thinking.
Could you, if you haven't received it, could you send a link to that commercial for High Tech High? I don't remember if the rest of the board saw it. Did they get it?
Yeah.
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 And it really,
I think they'd really enjoy
I
it.
think you guys should watch it because it's very, it's elucidating, to say the least.
And if the board is interested, we can take a trip there as well. We've been talking about that today.
Well, and I would like that. That would be fun. And then I'm going to take it a little step further and say that our discussions kind of went even beyond the STEM Center at UCR, and we have been talking a little bit about the idea that if we're going to have this pool of really qualified science kids who are going to really make Riverside stand out, this is going to be truly remarkable for Riverside. We need more than what we are doing, even with a STEM strategy. And so we've been talking about the idea of another STEM school on the west side of town that would also feed into this STEM center. And it might be a whole elementary school. It might look different than the current STEM school, but it would also be geared to developing highly achieving STEM students. So we were thinking maybe of Harrison, because Harrison's a big school with a lot of space, and maybe starting a West Side STEM center that would, or take over the whole school maybe, and doing STEM on both sides of the district, which both feed into the UCR school. And those would be open, they would be choice programs.
And I'll throw in there that was really just me and Kathy talking.
Yeah,
I don't
it's just
think-
us.
But it did come out of the conversations that we had with
We
these
talked
folks,
with
so-
Haley.
Yeah, and so, but we just thought, wow, yeah, we need to really increase that pipeline. We've got this high school over here. We have problems with access, with the busing. You've seen that. So we thought, well, why don't we have one, on the west side and the east side, and we could balance it out, and they could all have access to it. So Harrison just jumped out at us. I'm going to throw Kirk under the bus because he was talking to us about and Haley too. Oops, sorry. That we just thought it was actually one of the better places. So not that we're going there, we just want to look at it, right?
It was just an idea.
Just a thought. So we'll bring that one back a little bit later.
I think the concept is that we know that if we want this UCR STEM Center to be this kind of beacon for the district, then we're going to have to develop a lot more of these feeding systems that will really train kids to be better prepared for the sciences. And we were very excited about the idea that we could expand upon the enthusiasm that the STEM school already has. And we know that the enthusiasm is there. We know we've got waiting lists. We know we've got parents who want that. And so we're just really addressing the need that we're already seeing in the district.
We have a committee.
Mr. Borns, you have a question or comment?
Please, please.
Of course.
In fact, you all can say something.
Thank you for being here.
Superintendent Hanson, distinguished school board, I thought maybe I could just share the experience we had at Bournes helping to support the STEP conference. And of course the STEP conference is 16 years old and started before I ever got involved in STEP, Science and Technology Education Partnership. It was a vision of Congressman Ken Calvert, and this coming October we will have, of course with the tremendous support of RUSD and UC Riverside and Cal Baptist, 6,000 students coming into our technology center over a 2-day period. We ran into a challenge when the Raincross Convention Center was remodeled, because the STEP conference had been held there for many years, and so we had a facility that was not being used, and we took the blueprint of what we thought the STEP conference would need to be successful, a large meeting area, and then different breakout areas for having exhibits, and so we actually configured our facility to best accommodate the STEP conference. And we thought it was just going to be a temporary situation with the Raincross Convention Center being down for renovation for 2 years. But it turned out that it worked so well, being right next to UCR CSERT, that the STEP board decided to make it the permanent home for STEP. What's turned out is that the basic plan to support the STEP conference has become a very flexible facility that now, in fact, we were pleased to support the RIM Science Fair, where we had Riverside County, San Bernardino, Inyo, and Mono. I think we had 900 students exhibit their science projects. Now, we didn't envision that that was going to be down the road when we were talking about this facility. We now also have hosted the GEMS conference with United Way and Inspire Her Mind. And then last summer we hosted in our facility the SunPower Solar Academy with 60 students, a week-long academy, summer camp, where at the beginning the students knew nothing about solar energy and installation of solar panels on homes or businesses. And by the Friday, they were presenting business plans in groups of 5 for how they would create their own company and elect officers, and came up with a name of their company, and then presenting the economics of installation of solar energy on homes in front of a panel of judges and their parents. And that one-week conference inspired 3 more weeks of conferences this summer with the STEM LEAPS Law Enforcement and Public Safety Academy that John Robertson has played such a key role in. It's based on the same model as the Solar Academy, but now it's focused on STEM and law enforcement and public safety, because the Riverside Police Department is recognizing that they need to have more local students in the police department. But the challenge today of law enforcement, public safety, really requires a much higher level of STEM background. And that led to then having the computer program, Cyber Patriot. And so we're going to set up 60 Acer notebook computers for first the Solar Academy, the 2 weeks of law enforcement and public safety, and then Cyber Academy, the Cyber Patriot. So why I say all this is that we started out with a basic objective of serving the STEP conference, and that over the last 4 years has mushroomed into all kinds of new areas that really are to a great extent driven by the current needs of our community and the students. And so I think having a very flexible plan and then being willing to try different things, and if they work, build upon it. If they don't, then go some other direction. But we're very pleased how this has worked out. And our employees at Bournes really like to be involved in these programs for creating logos for T-shirts, or being mentors for the students, or just walking around and seeing what's going on. So this has many facets that I don't think we can really fully appreciate today, but it's certainly worthwhile. Thank you.
So thank you guys so much for taking the time to share all this and for all of the updates. We really appreciate it. So I just want to provide a few comments and just pose some questions. So I obviously think the vision of this is extraordinary, and I think the commitment on behalf of the community, people in industry such as Mr. Bournes and Ms. Johnson and everyone, I think it's obviously this is something that our community needs and should aspire to. Just some comments regarding, I think the fact that we're having the UCR faculty involved, I think is a really important thing. One thing I would just like to pose, and maybe this is something you guys are already looking at, but looking at it from, there's a lot of university-wide, UC-wide collaboration, and I don't know if that's something that we've tapped into. So just looking at the other UCs and seeing, obviously from a working group standpoint, that's not practical, but I just mean in terms of some resources and some insight. I think it would behoove us to reach out to the other UC campuses as well, and the faculty could probably, based on research they're doing, could be conducive to that. The other university, from more on the science technology side of it, Caltech,
I think, I don't know if you guys have reached out to them, but they would essentially, I think, be like the preeminent STEM type, research university in Southern California. So I would think, and what you guys are mentioning, NASA and things like that, I think engaging Caltech in some capacity. So Emily Abbott, who's based in Vice Chancellor of Michael Pisani's office, who's a colleague of mine, she actually came from Caltech, and she was involved with industry corporate partnerships. So that, again, could be a very relevant resource. So I'm happy to make that introduction. If not, you guys are already connected with them. Other comments is CARB, California Air Resources Board, being relocated to Riverside. You guys, I don't know how familiar you guys are with that, but so the California Air Resources Board is really the preeminent air quality climate change research institution, arguably in the world. Even the Department of Energy at the federal level really seeks a lot of their input on direction. They are relocating a $366 million facility from El Monte to Riverside, which is going to be developed in the next few years. And so figuring out ways where we can piggyback off of a lot of the research equipment facilities that are going to be put in there, and how this could create opportunities for students. It's going to be physically based on UCR's campus. So it's a huge asset, and I think we should try to coordinate some efforts there as well. Also, industry engagement, I think the fact that we have Mr. Bournes here is obviously indicative of the fact that this is something that's already we're mindful of, but I just wanted to get a sense also of how far our scope in terms of who we're reaching out to in creating industry partnerships. So not just on like the internship side and things like that, but sponsorships and technology. And then my other comments are related to kind of the spirit, those guiding, those 5 themes that you guys mentioned, and specifically the equity and access for all. So, one of my concerns is I don't have the actual statistic offhand, but our demographic profile for STEM is not reflective of the broader RUSD community. And I know this is a area that we want to make progress in. I know this is something that's thoughtful of, but when I look at this high-tech high, they have 63% students of color as part of their student body. And it seems that one of the ways that they've been able to get there is they, obviously the demand is very high, so they have a lottery system just like we do. But their lottery system is a blind zip code-based lottery to ensure equity and diversity. I just want to explore if there's a reason why we are opting not to take that approach, or if that's something we want to consider taking that approach. Because I think obviously, as it's understood that this is a model, and they're further along, obviously, in their process. So I think that might be a strategy to look into. Also, the overall capacity is obviously very limited, and I know that's by design because we want to create small classrooms. But it's very clear that the demand is going to outpace the capacity. So I know that we're talking about these touch points and making this a district-wide asset, which obviously the spirit of that is the way it should be. But there is no substitute to actually being on the STEM high school campus and being a student there. And so if the students are not representative of the community and they're getting this secondary access through the shared labs, I think obviously that's progress compared to the current situation, but I don't think that that's satisfactory from a broader perspective unless the representation of the student body starts becoming more reflective of the diversity of our community. So I don't know if that blind zip code based lottery is the panacea to addressing that, but I think that I think we need to figure out ways to look at that equity piece a little bit broader, because I just think that a touch point is just again it's value, but I don't think it's a substitute. And so I don't really have more ideas in terms of how to address that, but I just think those are things to pose and for all of us collectively to work through, because the comments I'm making, obviously these are shared issues that we want to constructively be part of the solution. They're not meant to be negative about the direction we're going or anything of that nature. So I don't know if you have any thoughts, but those are my comments.
I think something that we need to think more about and do more research and have more dialogue around. I do know that there is definitely was conversation about not having students who come from other schools that are bused be like having that as a secondary piece, but that they may potentially be infused in the lab if there's an interest in the STEM high school students to take the aviation lab, and they've selected that, again, coursework that's interdisciplinary, and someone from Arlington has taken like a foundational course and wants to come as well, they would be potentially be taking the course together, so it wouldn't be like that student would be ancillary. A lot more dialogue around that, a lot of more ideas that need to be generated, but that's just a first thought that I have.
I think I'm glad that Dr. Farouk spoke before me, because he can say it so much more articulately than I could. But some of my thoughts on the themes, I think they're perfect, and I think that following those kinds of ideas and concepts will lead us to exactly where we need to be. I do have some questions regarding those themes. So when we say high-level STEM, I hear what you're saying about the opportunities in classes and coursework that these students can take. I know currently some of those are in place, but the curriculum that's at STEM now is, besides the environment, is not that much different than what a student can take at Poly or North or Ramona from an AP class. So I think, and I think you guys probably would agree, that as we conceive these classroom experiences, that it is distinctly different than the opportunities that we can get at a traditional high school. Otherwise, it doesn't differentiate the experience. So I want to make sure that's clear, and that's just not a traditional AP class. For the second theme, Dr. Farouk said it perfectly in terms of equity for access, especially in a time where our funding is substantially higher than other districts because of our unduplicated students. And if we're getting additional money from the state to serve those students, and a school like STEM, which is an expensive endeavor to take on, is disproportionately represented by non-unduplicated students, and we're putting resources to it, I don't want the state to come back and have an issue with how we're distributing resources across the district. But I think it also speaks to a larger issue, which Dr. Farouk mentioned, so I'll just go into briefly, that why aren't those students going to that school? Is it just an issue of education, awareness, support? So I think as staff, we really need to look at that and find out what we can do better to not only encourage those students to apply to the program, but also to make sure those students are prepared for the program. So I like what we said with Brad and John in the beginning of the presentation, that you really have to look at it as from a district-wide issue and provide those opportunities to students starting very early on. So this is a long-term play. It's not going to be fixed overnight. But I think if we start to put these items in place now, then this issue that we're seeing at STEM will be solved. So I like. Kathy and was it just us two that went to CART?
Mm-hmm.
The second time, I think staff went before us. But it was a brilliant model. I don't think it's the perfect model for RUSD, but when I initially saw it, I was trying to think, how could this work best for our district? And the thing I liked most about it was it provided a unique education experience for students, but it provided a unique education experience for any student that wanted to go. And it wasn't where you had these resident students there. However, like I said, I think it's a perfect example of what would work for RUSD. So I like the blended hybrid model. I think you already see it with STEM. You know, I see students, friends of mine, who they've started in elementary at STEM and they've gone to 8th grade and they say, I love STEM, I like the experience, but I feel like I'm missing out on the traditional experiences high school students would have. So they leave STEM, which is kind of a bummer because you've prepared them and ingrained these great science skills with them, and then they leave and they're going to go get this experience they would have that same experience that I had at Poly in 1999. You know, so I like the idea where students can use it. Initially, I have to think more about it, probably do a little bit more research, but we point to High Tech High as a good example, and I see that they're serving 5,000 students, which is huge. I understand San Diego is a much bigger community than ours, but limiting the experience to 400 to 500 students permanently seems like we're going to have an issue where it's going to be a long waiting list. How many students, once we have seniors at STEM, would we have in high school right now at our current site?
Oh, deal. I saw.
The STEM high school. No, once it's freshmen through seniors. Okay.
Currently, if I can add, Mr. Moore, currently, if I recall right, the high school is set to accept 90 or 70 ninth graders, and if they all roll up to 10th, 11th, so you would eventually,
280.
yeah, have a graduating class of 70 seniors.
Yeah, so I understand the desire to want to keep a small, intimate school, and but I think that the expense at what it would cost to build this place, to make it viable and to provide the opportunity for it, I think we're going to have to look at what it would look like to have more students there. And not just, I understand there'll be more there that can visit, but I think you're going to have more than 100 per year that are going to want to send their kid to that school, and we can't build a second STEM center like this. One last thing that I'll share, that I'll say is, I'm glad that we're talking about another STEM school, because I think just like our other choice programs, whether it's DLI or what's the one at Bryant?
Core Knowledge.
Yeah, or the Core Knowledge. We've expanded as the need has arisen. So I think we should do the same thing with STEM, especially in the world that we live in now, that all the jobs and opportunities for students when they go into the workforce are heavily in need for STEM. So I think the more opportunities we can provide for students, and also equity and access in terms of being physically able to get your student there, I think that's the right thing to do. And whether it's at Harrison or some other site, and whether it's similar to the model that we have now or all the elementary school, I think that's all stuff that the committee can talk about and find the positives and the negatives. So that's it for me. Mrs. Halliday.
Yeah, I was just going to answer some of your points a little bit, but the 500 would be sort of the day students or the all-day students or the residents, as we say, right? But I think you could easily be up to 1,000, 1,500 students at a time could be accessing different programs. And we have to understand it's still a choice program, which means, we can't put all of our kids in marching band or football either. So we have to have choices. But I think that by adding more of our STEM strategy throughout the district and putting another STEM school on the other side of town, I think we'll build up that capacity that you were talking about and that equity. And I think it'll be there. But as far as making it bigger for the existing kids, I don't know how much space we have to make it bigger.
Are you referring to the current site that we have?
No, I'm
Oh.
referring to what we could build at UCR.
Oh. What's the size of the building that we are looking to
Well,
build?
we don't know yet, but I'm just saying we know the space, and there is a limit to what we can build for whatever amount of money that the facilities bond will allow us.
But we have the ability to build up, right?
Yeah, oh no, I mean, could build a skyscraper, but
Victoria can chime in, but High Tech High may serve 5,000 students, but they have multiple campuses, and they started out with one, right? So, and each of them is small
Right.
and intimate.
In 1999, they started with, they took over Point Loma, the retired military base. And so they started with High Tech High, grew it a grade by year, much like RSA is doing. So they have the original High Tech High. Next, they opened High Tech Middle in the building just across the way. Then they converted the old foundry and created High Tech International. And then they took another building and went 3 stories and have an elementary in the first floor, a middle school, High Tech High Media Arts in the second floor, and High Tech Media Arts High School in the third floor. And they finally just bought the building that the Navy SEALs Team 6 used to train in, and turned it into a joint, both an elementary, High Tech Elementary, as well as they boast the only school of education in the country that is actually located on that campus.
And
So
Victoria, it's a charter school.
it is a charter school, chartered by San Diego Unified. And they also have a K through 8 and high school at Chula Vista on the Mexican border, and one in North County, an elementary, middle, and high. I want to reflect both board members' comments about equity and access. I often ask groups the questions you are in kind of a bald-faced way. What would it look like if we really meant it? It's one thing to say we believe in equity and access, but what does it really look like? And the committee struggled with these issues. It's transportation enabled. It perhaps is a blind lottery. I'm very familiar with High Tech High. I taught Cal Berkeley with Larry Rosenstock, the founder, a couple of times. So I know that we also want to look at the research so they have a number of small schools. But those small schools on campuses, those small schools have kind of their own orbit, as it were, their own autonomies, et cetera. They're part of the network, of the High Tech High network, but they definitely are small enough that students are known well, the teachers share the same students, and they have time to collaborate and mechanisms through which they collaborate. For instance, every High Tech High, the first hour of the day is teacher collaboration time. And I say High Tech High broadly writ, the K-12 system. So the other thing that I would say is when we looked at many of the exemplars, many of those exemplars did serious recruiting, even though they're a lottery system. Science and Math Institute on Point, co-located on Point Defiance Park with the aquarium and the zoo. They're a lottery, but they know that they need to go to the poorer communities, the poorer schools, church youth groups, etc., and they do a tremendous amount of recruiting because they're so successful with 100% graduation rates and great ongoing college. They know that people who are savvy are going to be fighting to get in there. So they want to make sure, even though they do the lottery, that they really do the recruitment that's necessary to get what the folks that they need. And the final thing I would say before your next questions and comments is that look at your community assets and how you might take advantage of them. So one of the exemplars we looked at was MC Squared in Cleveland, Ohio. Its freshmen are on the lake in the Science Museum, the Children's Science Museum. The sophomores are on GE's lighting campus, national headquarters in Nela Park. Every student has an engineer mentor on site, eats lunch with them every 2 weeks, etc. Those students, by the way, own a patent and an LED light bulb that you can buy in Home Depot. They invented. And then their junior and senior year, they're on Cleveland State University site. So there are oftentimes many assets and opportunities in the community to co-locate some other programs. Similarly, School of the Arts is co-located with University of Washington, Tacoma. So there are many opportunities to also have powerful programs co-located with partners and assets, and you may have community assets that you can take advantage of to expand this beyond the site, the 7 acres that you have at UCR. But you have to start somewhere, and you have to do it well and right,
Dr.
and
Farouk.
then expand and grow.
Thank you so much for those insights. I just want to, those outreach and engagement strategies that you mentioned, has our district started looking and studying on how we're going to be adopting those as well for our, even our existing STEM school?
I would allow Ms. Carmen Day. I don't.
If not,
know
it's
the
okay. I just
details.
want to make sure
No,
that that's something
I
we're
would
looking
say
at.
not. I would
That's
say
okay.
not, other than, you know, we took the visits and we have awareness, but we haven't started any
Okay.
outreach strategies.
Sure.
I think that one thing I want to make,
Let me just add, though, last year we did go out and we went to the communities in Liberty. We went to the communities in Longfellow. We held special parent nights. I'm looking at Mr. Garcia here for some affirmation. 2 or 3 parent nights that we had last year trying to reach out to get the kids to turn into the lottery. But even though we did that, it didn't change the outcome as far as the lottery.
Right, and I've mentioned this before, that I think we have to look at unconventional strategies because their whole mindset and priorities as families is very different. So, just like you mentioned, I think the faith-based community churches is a really effective way to reach that particular segment of the community. So, yeah, I would say that. But one other, were you going to say something?
I just had misunderstood your question before. You probably noticed, right?
Okay. Go ahead. Yeah.
No, I just had misunderstood it because I thought about outreach to other
Oh,
STEM
you mean-
design.
Oh,
Yeah.
okay.
So
Okay.
I'm sorry about that. But I
No,
did
it's-
want to say, in response to what Mr. Lee noted, we've always had this idea that we would have this small high school, but that we would have students touch, and it wouldn't just be something that's limited, it's something that could be fully engaging for the students. That's the hybrid model that you mentioned. So it's not where there's only 400 students that are going there, but there's another 600 students that are going there and participating in high-level lab work too, and not traditional lab. So I just wanted to kind of
Thank
reinforce this idea of a hybrid model.
Mrs. Luck-Dawson?
Did you have another point?
I was just going to say one other thing. I don't want to put Dean Thomas on the spot. Is it okay if I ask you a question regarding this? So I noticed in the High Tech High that they're looking at having a graduate school of education that's operating and embedded in the K through 12. I'm not saying necessarily we have to be that ambitious about it, but what are your thoughts about, from the education side, how you see it interfacing with the STEM school?
Sure. And I only have a couple of ideas. I think putting a lot of great minds together, we can put together even more. But I think that there are great opportunities for undergraduate students to mentor, students in the school, to serve as, teacher aides, and to get involved in thinking about, what some of the possibilities of getting involved in education are about. And then through our teacher education program, I think it could be an excellent site for, the 50 students that we have right now who are studying to be STEM teachers, to have a placement experience, and it could also be a draw to even increase the number of students that we have in the STEM areas. So I think there's a lot of opportunities for kind of symbiosis between the UCR campus and the STEM Academy at kind of, all levels, STEM faculty, education faculty, and students.
Sure. Thank you so much.
Sure. Ms. Luck-Dawson?
This is going way back, but I was waiting my turn. The reason I asked Victoria to talk about the High Tech High thing was because, and I'm not trying to convince you otherwise, but I'm like not that hung up on the 400 to 500 kid thing, because I anticipate this thing is going to grow organically, like our RSA has already. And I think the more the more it grows, so we have this one facility, and then we're going to generate so much excitement and interest in the community and the industry that there's going to be more partners coming in. There's going to be more facilities available. I think it's just going to grow organically. So I guess I wasn't that hung up on it, but that was my experience, my opinion.
One other thing I was going to share, I forgot when I was writing it down, is one of the things that concerns me with the long waiting list at any of our choice programs is if this is a demand and a need that parents want for their students, and if we can't provide that, then a High Tech High will come in and provide it for us. So I think we can do a better job than any charter school in educating our students. And I don't want to miss out on opportunities. And, you know, a great charter school like Encore comes in because maybe our arts program isn't up to snuff. And I think I just want to make sure when we're thinking, even if it's starting small in the beginning, I'm not opposed to that, but thinking 15, 20, 30 years from now, is this facility going to be able to handle the kind of demand that it's going to bring? And we can't build, it's very rare, I'm sure, in any community that you can build a high school campus at a university, especially a university like UCR. And there's going to be a lot of students that want that. So even if you do replicate as it grows and we can find community partners and put it at other locations, there's something special about UCR, which is just why the committee and the parents don't want that RSA to move from the location that it's at because of its access, how close it is to UCR. And now we're getting even closer, which I think is fantastic. So when we're conceptualizing what this footprint will look like,
No, I
just wanna make sure we can-
appreciate that. No, I think that's a good point, because I do think I would like to see that at that facility, at that location. The idea, just like Mr. Borns was talking about, his facility is flexible and they can accommodate so many people. So I'm throwing that back at you now, is that we have, take Mr. Lee's comment, I think it's, I don't know how you feel about that, but I think it's important.
yeah.
You're talking about the actual ability to design something so that it can grow with our demand.
Correct.
Yeah, I think that's wise.
You just get one shot at it.
I think that's wise.
There's been so much time and energy and effort and resources put into this plan, and there's still a lot more to go. I would hate to sell ourselves short by not realizing that there is no box, that we can do whatever we want, and now is the time to be able to do that. You know, if I was a charter school owner and hearing Mr. Bourne's presentation about what his facility has, I would try to come up to him and convince him, let me put a charter school at your facility, you know? So, just got to be wary of that.
Don't do it, don't do it.
So point well taken, master plan the site so that it can expand and be flexible and adaptable. Yes, great.
Can I just interject? So, you mentioned the trip last year to Clovis, and I believe it was you and Mrs. Alavia that went, and to the Center for Advanced Research and Technology. And I know that there's a trip planned in September for Mrs. Lockdoss and Dr. Fruch and Mr. Hunt. And you know my desire to really have you go there, because the model hybrid is that very thing. You have kids that continue to stay at Arlington High School, at Poly High School, or whatnot, but go to that center for 2-hour pathways, the biomedical pathway. And they can go back and continue to participate in their home high school. And then there's another 400 kids that come back in the afternoon for that. So to think big, to think, because I asked the same question to staff, and I was hearing the number 12 to 1,500 needs to be built that big for that kind of thing. And I talked to Dr. Lewis about, can we do that? How does that look on 7 acres? And what does that accommodate? And so those are the numbers that we have been talking to Chancellor Wilcox, I've been talking about. Not just a school for 400, but can you have a school that can accommodate 15 to 2,000 as we grow into this? And so I really hope that schedules can be arranged, and that Dr. Fruch and Mrs. Lockdawson and Mr. Hunt can go with Lynn Carmody and the team back up to Clovis just to take a visit. Not that that's going to be how we model it, but it'll open up the vision and let you see what can happen and how you can accommodate so many kids in that. So I look forward to hearing more about your visit when you return.
Yeah,
Yeah,
I think the other great thing about that experience, not just the hybrid model, but it really broke down the barriers in between campuses. So they explained to us that Clovis and
Fresno.
in Fresno, that there's some battling in between. One's more well off, one's not, and when the kids came together, they realized they're just kids and they can all get along and they do science fair projects together and whatnot. So I like that idea too, where I don't think we have those exact same issues at our high schools, but there is some, and rivalries are good. But I think if kids can come together in the same campus, it's a good opportunity for them too.
And that all depends on the culture that's built for the adults who take leadership and build a culture that. Yeah. Yeah. That was very nice.
I think we're coming to a close here, so I just wanted to share this. One of my favorite stories about economic development is from the city of New York. And Mayor Bloomberg, when he was trying to re-energize their city, I think Dr. Fruk may know the story, trying to re-energize the economy of their city after the crash, was looking at ways to get things going again. And he looked across other economies and saw which ones were robust and which were booming, and they all had lots and lots of engineers, people with BSs in engineering, and consequently had lots and lots of patents associated with their cities and their regions. And so he put into motion a number of solutions that would encourage more engineering folks to be trained and stay in their city. And I just really like that idea for our area too, honestly. You know, and not it's a way to improve all sorts of things here, is starting at that ground up and moving forward. It's part of that big solution. So I just wanted to close with that comment.
And to echo Trustee Locke-Dawson's comment, I just want to go back to CARB, the California Resources Board Research District, because I think that speaks exactly to where the demand side is coming. And our region is being positioned to be a global leader in climate change air quality research. And so I think for the STEM students, this is something aspirational that they can go get a solid education, go off to college, and then have a reason to come back, because they'll know that there's high quality jobs waiting here for them. So I think this is fantastic.
Absolutely. Anybody else? All right, before we get to board member comments, oh, do you? I'm sorry. Do you guys have something?
We just want to have, there are a couple things. One is there's a very tentative timeline on page 32. And Patricia Locke-Dawson and Kathy Allaby reviewed it, and there were a couple thoughts that maybe you had to communicate to the rest of the board around those that maybe we should add. And then we can jump into just a brief update on the land lease. So page 32.
So the question specific.
So one of the things I
wanted
just
to-
suggested to Lynn that wasn't on here was having some sort of capital campaign or sponsorship campaign to raise private funding and foundation funding for this as well. And that wasn't didn't make it on the timeline, but I
No,
just
I
wanted to
think
share
that's
that.
important.
That's probably an
Good
important
opportunity.
milestone.
It links to what Dr. Farooq said earlier.
Yeah, the
as well.
corporate sponsorships.
Yeah, exactly.
Perfect.
Anything else
Thank
on
you
the
for that.
timeline?
And on the lease, were you going to touch on that?
Yes. Mays, would you like to give a brief update on the lease?
So we're on page 16 of the PowerPoint.
So just very briefly on page 16 and 17, what we did is we kind of highlighted the main points in our lease term agreement sheet that we are sending back and forth between us and UCR staff to finalize. Once that's finalized, then it kind of sets the tone for the lease itself, the actual contract. And that is somewhere that in the fall that we're working on finalizing. So I'm just going to go briefly and just let you know the highlight of that term agreement is that it is going to be 49 years of a lease agreement. Right now, the term sheet doesn't say with an option to renew, and so we're sending it back with some red line items in it to consider modifying that we can renew the lease. The rent will be $1. The use will be for the STEM center. I mean, it's all really exactly what you have already talked about as far as our agreement.
Could you speak a little bit more into the mic?
Okay. I don't know why it's just me. Is it because I'm short?
No, it's everybody. It's everybody.
Is it everybody? Okay, I'm sorry. And the access, as far as the STEM center, will be separately negotiated in an access agreement. Construction will be constructed, the project improvements in accordance with the Regent quality standard, the UCR Regent quality standard. And then the CEQA, which is something that's required as a report that will be done for the STEM Center, and we are taking responsibility for that report and the work that goes into that. And so, of course, it'll be in collaboration with the UCR staff in the facilities and operation area. So I can entertain any questions. This was sent back again to UCR with all of the collected information and feedback from our legal counsel, from our facilities and operation staff, from our cabinet, and was sent back. And so we'll keep you updated.
Take a question from Mrs. Lochdossen.
Now, I'm just going to be excited. And so I'm glad to see they get the lead standard. Maybe we can get our green roof and our garden up there. So that would be very cool.
I know it's really early on. Do we have any idea what it's going to cost to build a facility there?
I think we are looking at somewhere in the $50 million range if we really look at what the numbers that have been thrown as far as enrollment.
Okay.
We're looking somewhere in that.
Okay. Any other questions from anybody?
But we don't know until the whole program is really
No, I understand. Just
designed.
rough ballpark's fine. Anything else from the presentation from staff? Dr. Hanson? Nothing?
Is that this? Yes,
Please.
would you please, Lynn?
So thank you. I want to make mention that our goal tonight for how we presented to the board was to really look at the STEM strategy district-wide. Sometimes you can have a big aha moment, and when I listen to the parent speak publicly about their son not being prepared, but they love STEM, I realize that that is really key for us. So yes, we've been having some preliminary discussions about where to put another STEM site, whether it be Harrison or High Grove, because we have CFD's funding there to help support that. That's great. Obviously, High Grove doesn't, we've got some thing in that area already, so that's why you've heard Harrison. Again, just very preliminary. But we're going to continue to focus hard and efficiently on this topic and move forward with either a consultant and the working group, or even thinking about a principal in design for the next steps and really digging into the program. Thank you very much for your input.
Thank you. Any other comments from anybody? All right, so before we wrap it up, tonight's kind of a big night for two people here today. I know it's Dr. Lewis and Mrs. Mills' last school board meeting. I think Dr. Lewis is your last days tomorrow, and Mrs. Mills next week sometime. So I know we're going to miss seeing you guys at that table, but I know you both have done well to prepare the next person to come in and take over for you. I won't say replace you, because I know we can't do that all at once. But I think staff might have some pictures of presentation or something. Picture? Okay. Yeah. So maybe the board can go and can take a picture. Kurt got dressed up for the picture.
No, I'm doing just fine.
Alrighty, so we'll go to board members' comments. Mrs. Alvey, anything from you?
No, just thank you for a very positive workshop. Very positive. Thank you.
Good. Dr. Farouk?
Yeah, I just want to say that it's just remarkable. I know this has been a long time coming, and it's going to continue to be a lot of work, but it's really impressive that the team and the level of engagement we have. So thank you, everyone.
Ms. Luck-Dawson?
I would just, I'd like to thank the board for its patience, because I know some of this has been going on in a very dark corner, and you haven't heard anything, so I really appreciate you being open and listening. So thank you very much, and thank again our committee members. Thank you, thank you, thank you, and staff for doing a fabulous job. And Victoria was our fearless leader for a good part, so thank you very much.
I know you're not a member of the board, Dr. Hanson, but do you have any comments?
Thank you, Mr. Lee. And I'll just echo as I look out and I see the community members who over the last 2 years I've become friends with, and I see parents that have their kids in the STEM program, and all the work and the heavy lifting behind the scenes that staff has done. I truly am grateful, and it's exciting. This morning, as I'm a board member also for the Chamber of Commerce, and to see Provost Teneri stand up and talk about UCR and their plans as they have their master facilities plan, and he said the thing that's the furthest along is our partnership with RUSD, and he highlighted the STEM Center and talked about that. And the timeline that was given out this morning, so staff knows, is 3 years, and we open up not 4 years. So we'll see how that goes. But there's just a lot of positive momentum as we move down this path together to doing what's best for our kids and keeping our kids at the center of all of our discussions. This is a great example for that, and I'm grateful to the board members for your foresight, because you've been talking about this long before I came, and to see it come to fruition and to see the relationships that are happening with UCR. Not just that, I mean, in this morning I sat next to President Ron Ellis at CBU. You know, of course, there's the engineering boards over there, and we have, I was with Dr. Esock in the morning, in a meeting this morning. Great partnerships with higher ed right now on public education, as well as an incredibly supportive chamber, the business field. And so the stars are lining up, and it's just going to get really exciting, more exciting than it is right now in Riverside. And it's a pleasure to be a part of it and to serve this community.
Thank you, Dr. Hanson. Just a couple thank yous from me. One to Mrs. Alvey, because since I've been on the board, I know that you've kind of spearheaded this effort to get STEM organized and get a plan together. And to the committee, I see several folks out in the audience that have been at these board meetings as long as I've been up here at board meetings. So thanks for your years of commitment to this STEM center. And I think all your hard work is going to pay off, and you're going to be proud of something that this district's going to build in the future. Hopefully our taxpayers see it the same way, and they vote for the bond, because that's really going to get everything off the ground. So thanks to the committee. Thank you also to Patricia for helping Kathy out. And we knew we didn't have to be worried about that dark corner, because we knew we were in good hands with you both. I just had one thought as we kind of progress and think about the type of facility that we can provide to our students. I had the opportunity, and Patricia was there, and Angela was there, and Tom was there at RCC at their Performing Arts Center. And I know we're not building a Performing Arts Center, even that would be pretty cool too. The thought in every single room is just amazing. I mean, they really didn't put any constraints on what they could provide for their students for performing the arts, and it's just a world-class building. And I think it would be worthwhile for some of the committee members to go and take a look at just what they were capable of doing, and years in effort, and $40 million later they have that amazing building. So that's it for me. So thank you, everybody. We're adjourned.